Hi there. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the channel, the Prog Monster channel. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. So, we're going to start with the episode 5 of the series we are running, mini series, I guess, which is called the 1960s or the British invasion. Now, this part of it is not so much of the British invasion. I guess you might call it American invasion, although I don't see how you can invade your own country, but that can happen, and we've seen it. Anyways, so we've done 4 British bands so far, and I know some people will say, "Well, where's Zeppelin? Where's Pink Floyd? Where's Genesis? Where's Yes?" Even though these bands all started in the '60s, remember the topic is bands from the '60s. It doesn't necessarily mean that that was they may have started in the '60s, but maybe they're mostly influential in another decade. And in the case of those bands I just said, and you can throw Jethro Tull in there as well if you want, those are all bands who I think going forward had a much bigger impact in the 1970s than they did in the 1960s. So I chose the 4 British bands that I think had the biggest impact in the 1960s. And so now we're going to do 4 American bands so that it's kind of evened out. Because music wasn't just about Great Britain, although, I tend to favor Great Britain. I'm probably more biased than most people on that subject, but you have to give some deference to other bands and other genres too, not just pop or hard rock or blues or any of that stuff. You have to give a little bit more to other genres. So today's band, which is Jefferson Airplane, this is the album Surrealistic Pillow. I think it's probably their best album. It's the one I own. I've only begun to discover these guys in the last year or so, although this particular album I probably had for 2 or 3 years. So I kind of picked Jefferson Airplane because I wanted to do a representation of some kind of what I would call psychedelic rock. And I think of them as kind of being the poster child for that band, that genre. Now, there are other psychedelic bands who people might say were bigger or more influential, but to me, I kind of think there's a couple things that Jefferson Airplane does that other bands don't. First of all, you have a prominent female vocalist here in that genre. And there may be 1 or 2 others like that, but I think she is probably the most well-known one. The music of the band, they were at all the big events of the time period, the Monterey Pop Festival, the Isle of Wight Festival, even the Woodstock Festival. And they also received a Grammy Award, Lifetime Achievement Award. So I think this band, if they hadn't had so much inner conflict amongst them, could have probably sailed even higher. And they actually, as Jefferson Starship later, actually did quite well as Jefferson Starship, and as Hot Tuna was in there as well, right? So got a few bands that broke away from them. But anyways, we're here to talk about Jefferson Airplane, a band that I'm still really discovering, but wanted to put here. I think they belong here on this list. They started out in 1965, and they kind of finished when they changed into Jefferson Starship in '74, and other elements went on to form Hot Tuna, and some elements went on solo stuff as well. So they had 10 studio albums in total, including this one. They've only had a couple of top hits, top singles, no number ones, but there's 2 songs on this album, Somebody to Love and White Rabbit, which are both big hits for them. Probably their 2 biggest hits. This, of course, those were songs that Grace Slick herself was very much involved in. So for me, if I was going to give 5 songs, I probably couldn't think of 5 that were in the '60s, or if I added Starship or or Airplane and Starship together. I could have come up with 5, but I came up with It's No Secret, Somebody to Love, White Rabbit, and A Plastic Fantastic Lover. Those are the songs I chose to kind of represent their music, I guess. The original members were Marty Balin. Yeah, too much baseball. Jorma Kankanen, I think it's probably originally a Finnish name. Paul Kantner, of course. Signe Tolley Anderson, Bob Harvey, Jerry Pelican, sorry. And then later you had Skip Spence came in there replacing Jerry and a few other members. And then, of course, Jack Cassidy and Grace Slick also joined the band, replacing some members of the band. So this is a 6-man band for the most part. Well, 5-man and a woman band. If you want to be correct, Of course, this is probably my favorite of their albums, but it's also the only one I have at this point in time. So it wins by default, so to speak. So they sold about 4.6 million albums in their career, which isn't, compared to some bands, isn't really that much. However, they were in a niche type situation as well, so that kind of held them back. But they did play at all of the huge festivals and were seen as a major player. To me, they've got some really good music written stuff. It's a little bit too much on the blue. This particular album, and I haven't really explored their other stuff, is a little bit heavy on the bluesy elements. I prefer the more psychedelic elements by the band. Of course, Grace has a fantastic voice. She had a lot of appeal to the masses as well. So that's my take on Jefferson Airplane. Eventually, they evolved into Jefferson Starship, and I think Jefferson Starship eventually just dropped the Jefferson part altogether and went with Starship. By that time, Grace was no longer in the band, and some of the other members had moved on as well. Marty Balin being one of them. He got kind of forced aside because his style was conflicting with some of the other members of the band. But a great band, highly influential. I think many psychedelic bands will cite them as being influential to them. I think of them as being the poster child for psychedelia. And that's my take today on Jefferson, on those bands from the 60s, those British Invasion, and this is the American part of it, featuring Jefferson Airplane. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want to make any comments about Jefferson Airplane, I am not a connoisseur of Jefferson Airplane. I know there's some people out there who absolutely adore this band and will have lots to say about them, things that, of a more personal nature, I guess, because there was lots of conflict in there. That's always an interest to people. So if you want to put any of those comments in the comment section, you're welcome to, or you could just talk about Jefferson Airplane or any of their studio albums or whatever you want to talk about. And please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, and we will see you all next Saturday for another episode. We're going to be doing Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, I don't see how you cannot talk about Jimi Hendrix in the 1960s. Hugely influential individual. Even though he's an American rock star, he was very influential in Great Britain. That's where he kind of launched his career. So he kind of crosses the divide here a little bit. So that will be the artist we're doing next week, Jimi Hendrix. I hope to see you all then. Take care and have yourself a good evening and a good night. Goodbye here from the Prog Monster.